Click here for DevSecOps and Cloud&Devops course. DevOps interview tips and tricks. How to prepare and stand out. 1. Know the DevOps lifecycle, not just the tools brief. A great DevOps engineer understands the process, not just the products. You must know how code flows from a developer's machine all the way to production, and how it is monitored and improved after deployment. What is the DevOps lifecycle? The DevOps lifecycle is a continuous loop that ensures fast and reliable software delivery with constant feedback. The key stages include 1. Plan, define requirements, track tasks, for example, Jira, Trello. 2. Develop, code and commit, for example, Git, VS Code. 3. Build, compile, build code into artifacts, for example, Maven, Gradle. 4. Test, run unit, integration, and automated tests, for example, JUnit, Selenium. 5. Release, package and prepare for deployment, for example, Helm, Docker. 6. Deploy, push code to servers or containers, for example, Jenkins, GitHub. Actions. 7. Operate, monitor health, uptime, performance, for example, Prometheus, ELK. 8. Monitor, feedback, gather feedback to improve the next iteration. This is a cyclical process. The feedback collected at the end helps shape the next planning and development cycle. Why it matters in interviews. 1. Describe your CI/CD pipeline. How do you manage deployments? Where does monitoring come in? They're really checking if you understand the end-to-end software delivery process. Can think beyond just writing scripts to how software runs, fails, and scales in production. Know how tools work together to improve reliability, speed, and feedback loops. Tools does not equal lifecycle. Here's a common trap. I use Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. That's just listing tools. A better response. We plan using Jira, code in Git, trigger Jenkins 101 pipelines on push, which build and test Docker images, then deploy to Kubernetes via Helm. Logs are shipped to ELK and alerts are handled in PagerDuty. Pro tip. When preparing, draw the pipeline on a whiteboard or paper. Practice explaining it out loud like this. Developer commits right pointing arrow 101 builds, test right pointing arrow Docker image pushed right pointing arrow 400 deploys to Kubernetes right pointing arrow monitoring via Prometheus right pointing arrow alerts in Slack right pointing arrow metrics reviewed for improvements. 2. Sample visual, text-based. Plan, right pointing arrow, code, right pointing arrow, build, right pointing arrow, test, right pointing arrow, release, right pointing arrow, deploy, right pointing arrow. Operate, right pointing arrow, monitor, feedback, interview preparation checklist for lifecycle. Can you draw and explain your past pipeline? Can you describe what happens after a commit is pushed? Can you explain how monitoring and feedback drive improvements? Do you know where security fits in, for example, secret scanning? SAST, DUST. Can you map tools to lifecycle stages? 2. Get hands-on, not just theoretical brief. DevOps is a practical engineering discipline. Reading about tools isn't enough. You need real, hands-on experience with CI/CD, containers, cloud, automation, and infrastructure. Why it matters. In interviews, hiring managers are looking for problem solvers, not people who just learn tool names from tutorials. They want to know. Have you built real CI/CD pipelines? Have you deployed an app to the cloud? Have you written infrastructure as code and automated deployments? Have you troubleshoot real-time errors? Your hands-on experience shows your depth, not just breadth. What you should try practically. 3. Here are essential DevOps practices to implement by yourself. 1. Set up a CI/CD pipeline, GitHub Actions, Jenkins. Create a simple CI/CD flow. Trigger. On Git push. Build. Node.js or .NET app. Test. Unit tests. Package. Docker image. Deploy. To AWS EC2, GCP, or Kubernetes bonus. Use GitHub Actions for a hosted, easy-to-use 101. Example. GitHub Actions workflow name. 101 pipeline on. Push. Branches. Main, jobs. Build. Runs on. Ubuntu latest steps. Name. Checkout users. Actions, checkout at v2. Name. Setup node, JS uses. Actions, setup node at v3 with node version 18. Name. Install and test run. npm install. 4. npm test. Name. Build Docker image run. Docker build my app, latest. 2. Dockerize an application. Take a sample app and write a Docker file. Build and run the image locally. Push it to Docker Hub. Run the image on a server. Example Docker file. from node 18. Work dir app. copy package json. run npm install. copy. Expose 3000. cmd npm start 3. Deploy to the cloud, AWS, GCP, Azure. Use free tier services or local VMs to launch an EC2 instance, Linux. SSH into it, install Docker. Deploy your containerized app. Or use AWS Elastic Beanstalk or Google Cloud Run for managed deployment. 4. Use Terraform or Ansible. Set up infrastructure as code, IAC. Define EC2 instances, S3 buckets, security groups in Terraform. Use Ansible to install nginx, Docker, or Node on those servers. 5. Example Terraform snippet resource, AWS_instance, web. 5. Set up monitoring and alerts. Use tools like Prometheus plus Grafana for container metrics, ELK stack for logs, Uptime Robot or Pungdom for public endpoints. Learn to read logs, analyze metrics, and set thresholds for alerts. Pro tip. Build a portfolio DevOps project, even a simple one, and document it. GitHub repo. README with architecture. Screenshots of CI/CD pipelines and dashboards. Sample logs and monitoring metrics. You can share this in your interview to demonstrate capability. Interview edge. Interviewer. Have you worked with Docker? You. Yes, I Dockerized my portfolio app, pushed it to Docker Hub, and deployed it to AWS EC2 using GitHub Actions. Here's the pipeline config. This turns a basic question into an impressive story. 6. 3. Master the why behind every tool brief. Anyone can name drop tools like Jenkins, Docker, or Terraform. What sets candidates apart is understanding why a tool is used, when it's the best choice, and how it fits into the bigger picture. Why this matters. In a DevOps interview, you'll often be asked, why did you choose Docker over virtual machines? Why not use CloudFormation instead of Terraform? Why GitHub Actions and not Jenkins? These are depth questions. They're trying to assess your understanding of trade-offs, your awareness of alternatives, your ability to design the right solutions based on context. Ask these why questions as you study. For every tool or concept, ask yourself, tool, why use it? Alternatives. Jenkins. Mature CI/CD with plugins, scalable. GitLab CI, GitHub. Actions. Docker. Lightweight, portable containers. VMs, Podman. Kubernetes container orchestration, auto-scaling, high availability. Docker Swarm, ECS. Terraform. Declarative IAC, cloud agnostic. CloudFormation. Pulumi. Prometheus metrics and alerting, Kubernetes native. Datadog, New Relic. 7. Sample tool. Analysis Docker against virtual machines. Feature. Docker. Virtual machines. Startup time. Seconds. Minutes. Resource. Usage. Lightweight. Heavy, entire OS boots. Portability. Very portable, same image runs anywhere. Depends on hypervisor. Use case. Microservices, 101 builds. Full OS environments use Docker when you need fast, consistent environments and microservices. Jenkins against GitHub Actions. Jenkins. GitHub Actions. Self-hosted, customizable. SaaS, managed by GitHub. Plugin ecosystem. Native GitHub integration. More complex to maintain. Easier for small to mid-scale 101. Use case. Use case. Large teams, advanced setups, simple to medium workflows. Interview example, I used Docker for deployments. I chose Docker because it lets us build once and run anywhere, which avoids, it works on my machine, issues. we avoided VMs to save time and resources. For orchestration, we paired Docker with Kubernetes to scale microservices efficiently. 8. How to practice. 1. Create a tool comparison sheet, list every major DevOps tool you've used. 2. For each, write why you chose it, what it solves, when not to use it. 3. Prepare a few defensive explanations why you didn't use an alternative. Bonus pro tip. Start questions with, the reason we chose 10 is because. That immediately signals ownership and clarity in decision making. 4. Don't ignore the basics, Linux, networking and GIT. Brief. Before you build pipelines, deploy containers, or manage clouds, you need a strong grasp of foundational concepts, especially Linux, networking, and version control, GIT. These are the building blocks of everything in DevOps. A Linux is the DevOps operating system. Most DevOps environments run on Linux servers, cloud or bare metal. You should be comfortable with navigating the file system, cd, ls, pwd, find, managing processes, top, ps, kill, nohub, working with logs, tail, grep, less, journal, ctl, managing permissions, chmod, chown, sudo, umask. 9. Shell scripting, bash, for, while, if, pipes, args. Pro tip. Automate basic server setups using shell scripts before using Ansible, Terraform. We understand networking deeply. Many interview questions involve debugging deployment, network issues. You should know, what is DNS and how does it resolve domain names? How does HTTP differ from HTTPS? What are common HTTP status codes, 200, 404, 500? What is a reverse proxy, for example, NGINX? Ports and services. Know what runs on 80, 443, 22, etc. Concepts like NAT, firewalls, load balancing, and SSL, TLS. Try running and exposing a local app using NGINX as a reverse proxy. See master GIT beyond just push, pull. DevOps equals continuous integration equals GIT proficiency. Know how to clone and branch. GIT clone, GIT checkout B. Work with commits. GIT commit, git log, GIT revert. Resolve merge conflicts. Understand pull requests and rebasing. Use GIT hooks for pre-commit automation. Bonus tip. Learn GitOps, where GIT becomes the source of truth for infra deployments, for example, Argo CD, Flux CD. Interview questions you might get. How would you troubleshoot a failing systemd service on Linux? What's the difference between a TCP and a UDP connection? How do you roll back a GIT commit in production? Why would you use a reverse proxy? How do you configure NGINX? 10. How do you inspect a process using the Linux CLI? Sample bash snippet for practice. Hash, bin, bash echo, updating server packages, sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade y echo, installing Docker, sudo apt install docker.io y echo, enabling Docker service, sudo systemctl enable Docker sudo systemctl start Docker. Use such scripts on a local VM or AWS EC2 instance to get real experience. Interview edge. Interviewer. How comfortable are you with Linux? I manage EC2 instances running Ubuntu, where I use systemctl to manage services, NGINX as a reverse proxy, and shell scripts to automate Docker installs and app deployments. I also handle log rotation and basic firewall configuration. That kind of answer builds trust immediately. 5. Be cloud agnostic, but cloud ready. Brief. Every company may use a different cloud provider, AWS, Azure, GCP, or even hybrid. Your goal is to be cloud agnostic in principles, but ready to work hands-on with at least one provider confidently. What does cloud agnostic mean? It means you understand core cloud concepts that are common across all providers. 11. Concept. AWS, Azure, GCP, Compute, EC2, Virtual Machines Compute Engine, Storage, S3, Blob Storage, Cloud Storage, Networking, VPC, Virtual Network VPC, Functions, Lambda Azure Functions Cloud Functions, Orchestration ECS, EKS AKS, GKE, So even if you've only worked with AWS, you can still talk about how similar concepts map to Azure or GCP. What you should be comfortable with. Here are the cloud tasks you should know hands-on. 1. Provision compute. Launch an EC2 instance. SSH into the VM. Install Docker or deploy a simple app to. Use object storage. Upload, download files to S3. Set public access or signed URLs. Configure static website hosting. 3. Understand IAM. Create and assign roles, policies. Use temporary credentials securely. Grant least privilege access. 4. Set up networking. Understand VPCs, subnets, security groups. Open ports, like 8443. Set up a load balancer and route traffic. 12. 5. Work with serverless. Deploy a Lambda function with a simple API gateway trigger. Monitor logs in CloudWatch. Understand cold starts, timeout. Sample AWS 151 commands. Hash launch an EC2 instance. AWS AKE2 run instances. Image id AMI0 CO2 Facebook 55956 C7D 316. Instance type T2, micro, keyname MyKey, security groups MySG. Hash upload to S3 AWS S3 CP myfile.txt S3 skeptical smiley face. My DevOps bucket. Certification isn't required, but having an AWS certified cloud practitioner or Azure fundamentals cert isn't mandatory, but it does boost credibility, especially if you lack work experience. Interview edge. Interviewer. Have you worked with the cloud? You. Yes, I deployed a Node.js app to AWS EC2 with an S3 bucket for asset storage, used Route 53 for DNS, and secured access via IAM roles. I can map similar services in Azure or GCP as needed. That shows cloud literacy, adaptability, real experience. 13. Pro tip. Don't become cloud dependent on just one, know how to learn any provider based on core concepts. 6. Design CI/CD like an engineer, not a user brief. It's not enough to use a CI/CD tool like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, or GitLab 101. You should understand how to design, optimize, and debug entire pipelines with intention and efficiency. What interviewers look for. They're evaluating your logical thinking in building pipelines, how well you understand environments, staging, approvals, whether you can debug failures, not just rerun pipelines blindly. If you know how to make pipelines modular, secure, and fast. Key CI/CD concepts you must master. Area. What to know. Pipeline structure. Understand stages like build, test, deploy, cleanup. Triggers. Push events, manual triggers, cron jobs. Environment variables. Secure use via secrets managers. Parallelism. Run tests or builds in parallel for speed. Artifacts. How to pass outputs between stages. Approval gates. Add manual approvals before production. Rollback strategy. Revert deploys on failure. 14. Sample. GitHub Actions CI/CD for Node app name. CI/CD pipeline on. Push. Branches. Main, jobs. Build. Runs on. Ubuntu latest steps. Users. Actions, checkout at v3. Name. Setup Node users. Actions, setup Node at v4 with Node version 18. Run. npm install. Run. npm test deploy. Needs. Build runs on. Ubuntu latest if. github.ref == refs, heads, man steps. Name. Deploy to EC2 run. SSH AKE2-user at my server, bash deploy.sh. 15. Explain this in an interview. This pipeline builds and tests on each push to main. The deploy job only runs if the build succeeds, and deploys the app via SSH to an EC2 server. Common pitfalls to avoid. Long-running pipelines with no caching. Secrets exposed in logs. No rollback or failure handling. No separation between staging and production. Using hard-coded environment values. Talk like an engineer. In my last project, I optimized the Jenkins pipeline by introducing caching for dependencies, reduced runtime by 40%, and added Slack notifications for each stage. I also included a rollback step using Helm in case of failed Kubernetes deployments. This shows depth of thought, ownership of outcomes, real DevOps mindset. Pro tip: keep a few CI/CD diagrams ready to sketch or explain your process visually during interviews. 7. Don't just talk about tools, share impact brief. Anyone can list tools like Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins. What interviewers want to hear is what you achieved with them, the impact you made, the problems you solved, and the value you delivered. Why impact matters in interviews? Interviewers are evaluating your business mindset. 16. Your ability to prioritize what matters. Whether you're just executing tasks or driving outcomes, turn this. I used Jenkins for 101. Into this, I implemented a Jenkins pipeline that reduced our deployment time from 20 minutes to under 5 minutes, which improved developer feedback loops and increased release frequency. Frame your stories like this. STAR method, great for storytelling in DevOps interviews. Element meaning example. S. Situation, the staging deploys were slow and frequently failing. T. Task. I was tasked with improving pipeline reliability. A. Action. I containerized the test suite using Docker and split test into parallel jobs. R. Result. This cut pipeline failures by 70% and shaved off 10 minutes per build. Use this to turn tools into stories. Real example, before and after, bad response. We used Docker, Kubernetes, and Jenkins for our deployments. Great response. Our team used Jenkins to automate builds. I then introduced Docker containers to isolate our test environments, which eliminated flaky tests. Later, I deployed our app on Kubernetes, using Helm to manage releases. This reduced manual ops by 80% and improved release velocity. 17. Use metrics wherever possible. Try to quantify deployment frequency, by per day or by per week. Downtime reduction, from XHRS to Y mins. Build speed improvements, from X to Y minutes. Cost savings, via automation or optimization, even if approximate, numbers show credibility and confidence. Prepare 2 to 3 impact stories around a CI/CD pipeline you built or improved, a cloud migration or cost optimization effort, a monitoring or incident response strategy, a problem you solved with automation, for example, Ansible, scripts. Interview prompt example. Interviewer: tell me about a challenging DevOps problem you solved. We had nightly test failures that delayed deploys. I created a Docker-based testing image and ran the suite in isolated containers with Jenkins parallel jobs. This fixed the flakiness and cut build time by 50%, enabling us to ship daily. That's impact. 8. Mock interviews and resume-driven drills brief. Practicing how you communicate your skills is just as important as having them. Simulate real interviews, rehearse answers based on your own resume, and get feedback. This is your best preparation strategy. Why this matters? Many DevOps candidates know the tech, but struggle to explain their work. 18. Get caught off guard by resume-specific questions. Overlook simple, tell me about yourself. Preparation practice makes you polished. Mock interviews. Find a peer, mentor, or use online platforms. Interviewing.io, meet a mentor. Record yourself. Answer common DevOps questions and listen back for clarity, confidence, and filler words. Whiteboard or explain visually. Practice drawing pipelines, architectures, or cloud setups on a whiteboard or digital pad. Resume-driven preparation. Most technical interviews start from your resume. Be prepared to explain each project you list. What was your exact role? Every tool, how you used it, not just naming it. Any achievement, show quantified impact example. On resume. Improved 101 pipeline using GitLab CI. Expected explanation. We had a single-step pipeline that took 15 minutes. I split it into build, test, and deploy stages, added parallel runners, and implemented caching. It now completes in under 6 minutes with better reliability. Common mock interview questions to rehearse. How do you manage secrets in CI/CD? Walk me through your cloud infrastructure. How would you handle a failed deployment to production? What monitoring tools have you used, and how did they help you troubleshoot an issue? Explain how you'd set up a canary deployment strategy. Final conclusion. Crack DevOps interviews with intent. Cracking a DevOps interview isn't about memorizing tools, it's about 19. Thinking like a problem solver. Communicating like a technologist. Executing like a systems engineer. Recap. The 8 must-follow strategies. 1. Master core DevOps concepts. 2. Learn by building, don't just watch. 3. Know the why behind the tool. 4. Don't ignore the basics, Linux, networking and Git. 5. Be cloud agnostic, but cloud ready. 6. Design CI/CD like an engineer, not a user. 7. Don't just talk about tools, share impact. 8. Mock interviews and resume-driven drills. Final tip. Combine knowledge, hands-on practice, storytelling, and confidence. That's the true DevOps mindset, and interviewers will feel it the moment you walk in. 20.